A nationalized property that was owned by a German and an Italian and a Mexican and a Frenchman as well. And those property has been settled to the satisfaction of both parties. There's only one country that it has not happened, that's us, because we continue to maintain the embargo. Regarding commercial property of, I'll give you a specific example, of the United States, for example, the DuPont paint factory. DuPont paint factory does not want their property back in Cuba because in 1976, they took a very generous tax write-off. For example, let's say the property was worth $100. DuPont said it was worth $1 million. So the only people that got messed up on that deal is the American taxpayer. Why is that significant? Because if the Cuban government was to call the DuPont family and say, come back and get your paint factory, it's yours, they're going to say, we don't want it, keep it. So it's a very complicated thing, and it's just not that simple. People just talk about the confiscation of property, but there's various classes of property. The confiscation of property of a Cuban, the Bacardi rum family, they're never getting anything back, period. It's just not going to happen. Okay? Now, as far as the Tampa Chamber of Commerce is concerned, I think the people in this room should put pressure on the Tampa Chamber of Commerce to take a more active role because they're welcome on Cuba. And most recently, they have voted to send their president, Henry Gonzalez, to go to Cuba. So that's a big step.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back in Tampa. And someone was asking me, you've been down this road before. Yes, I don't mean the Tampa road, the road with Cuba, trying to improve relations. I've been at this a very long time. I arrived in Cuba in July of 1958 as third Secretary of Embassy, and I was there. I saw Castro ride into Havana on a tank. Was there until we broke relations in January of 1961. As the ship sailed out of the harbor that night, I vowed I'd be with the first group of American diplomats back in, and I was. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was 27 years ago. I thought, as Bill Clinton came to office, that perhaps we were on the way. After all, the Cold War was over, the Soviet Union had collapsed, Cuba was no longer trying to overthrow other governments. Perhaps we could have a new beginning. But Clinton went down to Miami, had dinner with the Cuban American National Foundation, came out with a check for $175,000 and said he liked Cuba policy just the way it was. So we didn't have any rapprochement at that point. Here we are again. I had hoped that the Obama administration would move rather rapidly and decisively towards a new relationship with Cuba. There was some talk of that, but I don't say it was only talk. There's still hope that we're moving away from the sort of concepts and actions that characterized the Bush administration. Knowing that this would come up at the summit, the Obama administration issued a statement saying that limitations on Cuban-American travel and remittances would be removed. There was some expectation they might go further at the summit, but they did not. I would say quite the contrary, although Obama came across very well, but he didn't have anything more to say or nothing positive on Cuba. Yes, we've removed these limitations on Cuban-American travel, but, he indicated, now the ball is in the Cuban court. Now I want to see them move to release political prisoners, to move towards democracy and so forth. Well, that's never going to work. Cubans are not going to accept that kind of formulation. If you want to improve relations, you want to bring some of those things about, a more flexible system in Cuba, then you reduce tensions, you begin a dialogue, you begin some movement. You don't put forward a quid pro quo. First, you must change your system, and then maybe we'll move forward. That won't work and hasn't worked.
In recognition of his criminal defense work, and he is the, if I'm right, Richard, the lead attorney in the case of the Cuban Five. Is that right?
Thank you very much, Rob. I was the lead appellate attorney, and at this point in time, with the appellate proceedings having concluded, my role will probably become more of a lead post-conviction attorney. Each of the five has an individual counsel. I was the attorney that argued the cases in front of the Court of Appeals. And the way that Al Fox has described my role here, it does make sense from a trade standpoint to answer the question, who are the Cuban Five? Who are the five? Because anybody who wants to try to approach Cuba at this point should have a good knowledge of it, as the statement by Jorge Bolaños that was read a minute ago. There are five individuals, all extremely polite, gentle, nice people. From my standpoint, I talk to them on the phone and correspond with them. They range from two United States citizens, Antonio Guerrero, who is also a poet, and he's published a number of volumes of poetry, and including poems that he's written from his imprisonment in the United States, and to Rene Gonzalez. Rene is about to be, he is the one defendant who was not charged with espionage-related conduct. He was simply charged with being an agent of Cuba. The other three of the five are Fernando Gonzalez, who is serving a 20-year sentence, and Ramon Lavanino and Gerardo Hernandez, both of whom have life sentences. In terms of the experience that the Cubans have gone through in looking at the American system, how the American legal system has handled the five, they went to trial. Had one of the longest trials it was the longest trial at that period of time in the United States, 7-month trial. They were eventually convicted of every single charge without a single note coming back from the jury in Miami. Among the experiences that the jury encountered was being chased to their cars as deliberations began, with their license plates filmed in Miami. And they reported back to the judge their fear about that. There were events at trial continual events at trial, demonstrations by commando organization on a couple occasions outside trial that the jury had to be protected from. There were events occurring during trial that just made it quite clear that this was an extremely tense type of environment to have to ask people to come to the conclusion that even though these people were agents of the Cuban government, that their intent was not to commit harmful espionage. Ordinarily, one would think we could have won that case easily because there had never been a prosecution before in the United States of anyone for conspiracy to commit espionage, where there was not only no espionage, but no attempt to commit espionage.